Hello and welcome to the WIHS Journal Public Affairs program. I'm Gerry Williams. Second Chance Planet, Inc., headed by founder Gregory Spear, provides a second chance for former incarcerated individuals like myself and those in recovery from addiction who struggle to get jobs and housing. Second Chance Planet, Inc. provides work experience, training, and steady employment and a living wage so they can qualify for decent housing and potentially secure even better employment. Second Chance Planet, Inc. provides these things and more. So join me now for part 2 and my final segment where I ask Gregory what inspired you. And he said,
it really began with a nervous breakdown, as in your own life, as in many of our lives.
Right.
The key turning points happen in crisis. Crisis produces some very thoughtful energy sometimes,
right.
and causes us to take a step back and say, well, what do I really want now that I've survived that one? So my last field before this one was in finance, and I owned 2 finance companies, which I started off my kitchen table and grew into about a $4 million a year set of companies. And they were publishing specialized financial information on stocks and money management. And I ran that for 15, 20 years, depending on how you count. And then the financial crisis hit and took me out.
What year are we talking about?
Well, the financial crisis technically was in 2008, but it had long, slow-rolling effects after that, and I finally bit the dust. My businesses finally bit the dust, along with my mind, in about 2012. So when it took a few years to recover. As it turns out, a lot of small financial companies like mine, their proprietors had very similar problems where we knew our customers, and seeing their money evaporate, even though we knew it wasn't our fault,
right.
was really difficult emotionally. And we did blame ourselves, for not protecting our clients. And because we knew them, it was a lot harder on us than it was on Morgan Stanley. Harder on us personally, I think. And it turned out that there were many similar situations to mine where people had emotional crises, emotional meltdowns. And it took me several years to recover, actually. But in that process, I did some re-examination of my values. And it happened that before I got into finance, I was an organizer. I was a union organizer. I was a community organizer. And even while I was doing the finance job, I took a couple of years off to organize against the Iraq War in Connecticut. I built an organization called Connecticut Opposes the War, which went by the acronym COW. It was a faith-based, labor-based organization, involved hundreds of churches and labor organizations all over the state. But that was limited involvement for me of a couple of years in the middle of a financial career. And a financial career, I mean, let's face it, there's not a whole lot of meaning there. There's not a whole lot of social purpose there. It doesn't really do anybody any good in the end. After my businesses collapsed and I had my emotional breakdown, I had to rethink. Well, what do I really want to do? Do I want to do more of that? And the answer was no. I wanted to go back to my roots in organizing, in labor organizing, and in community organizing, which I did for many years before my financial career. And so I made a plan. It took a while to put the plan together, but the plan was a little different from what I'm actually doing. The plan was a recycling program that would be a department store. And because of the way my mind works, it would be a national chain of department stores. And it would be a reuse store. Everything in the store would be used, refurbished. But unlike a thrift store, it would feel more like Macy's than Goodwill.
Hey, well, let me tell you, folks, my bookshelf feels like Macy's. It's very nice. I'm very pleased with the bookshelf. Yeah.
Yeah, I decided that the key to successful recycling that really could make a dent in global warming was getting away from the whole thrift store idea of buying used. To get mainstream people to buy used, you had to make it look new. You had to make it feel new. You had to have a clean, well-lighted space. And as I was at the point of the business plan where I was talking to people who already owned reuse stores, I interviewed Terry Danaher, who was the owner of Value Office Furniture in West Hartford. And I walked in, asked him if he was the owner. He said, yeah. I said, well, I'd really like to interview you and find out what the business is all about, because I'm going to do a similar business.
Wow.
But don't worry, I won't be competing with you, because my first store is my first store, right, is going to be in either New Haven or Boston.
Okay.
I had decided that. And he said, oh, geez, that's too bad. I just put my retirement ad in the newspaper. I'm looking for somebody to take over the shop.
Wow.
So serendipity, And it took a year and a half for me to learn the business and make the deal and raise the money to buy his store. But that's how it happened, and that's why I'm in the office furniture business instead of in a department store. But it's a very similar concept.
Wow. Key word, serendipity. That interview.
Yeah.
I like your move there. I want to interview you.
There you go.
I want to pick your brain and see how this thing works. Yeah, but I'm not going to be one of your competitors,
Right.
Wow. So how does it work, Gregory? Is Second Chance Planet Inc. in some kind of prison database that prisoners that's coming out can look you up, or how do they find you?
Well, that's pretty easy. All the probation officers pretty much know us. Yeah, we are on a list. We have a relationship with DOC. I've been inside talking to prisoners, and they come out and call us. There's a long list of people who need help, who need employment, and it's very challenging because we really can't make a dent. In the 3 years that I've been doing this, we've helped maybe 60, 70 people with giving them a little bit of a track record, a little bit of a job history, and some idea of how to go about making their way in the job market. And we've had some long-term employees, but without growing, without getting bigger, without becoming a chain, which I still hope to do, we're not really going to make a huge impact. But I've been very gratified by how it feels to make a difference in a few people's lives, as I've learned more about how people wind up incarcerated and the luck of the draw that's involved in that, and some of the outright discrimination and intentional harm in social policy, intentional harm in some social policy that's involved in putting people behind bars. Oftentimes, it's really become very gratifying to be able to help a little bit when people are really ready, when people really want to build a life that doesn't involve that particular revolving door. Most people think at first glance it's very reasonable for an employer to not take a risk on somebody who has a felony conviction, who's been incarcerated, who's broken the law. What people don't realize is how many of the people who get hired have broken the law, just not gotten caught. Right? Or have broken the law and gotten caught, but were never incarcerated because of their particular positions in society. Right. And also how our system, I think most people would agree that with the idea that you did a crime and you did your time, and that the punishment should ideally fit the crime, and when you're done, you're done. That does make a lot of sense to people, but then it also makes sense that that person then doesn't quite get treated the same way when they get out. And there's a contradiction there that people just don't think about. If you don't treat them as if they've done their time, they paid for their crime, then what you've really got effectively is a lifetime of punishment. Right. And that wasn't in the sentence. Right. No judge said, you will never work again as a punishment for your crime. Right. But effectively, that's what happens. And that is just so incredibly unfair.
Right. Well, I thank God that you have a heart for that. And like you said, a lot of people who are hired are criminals. They just hadn't gotten caught, And I could go biblical on you to attest to that. It's written that we all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. So
I did worse things than so many people who are in prison right now. when I was 17 years old, I did, because a lot of people who are in prison right now are in prison for things like taking illegal drugs.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it's hard to imagine because today it's not even illegal with regard to many drugs in many locations. It's recognized as a medical problem. Addiction is a medical problem.
Mm-hmm.
You can still get arrested for it, but, becoming incarcerated for taking illegal drugs is relatively rare now. But it didn't used to be. There are hundreds of thousands of people in prison for taking illegal drugs.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but the shoplifting I did when I was 17 is a lot more serious a crime than taking an illegal drug.
Right.
Why did I not wind up incarcerated for 17 years on an automatic sentence because it was a third strike?
Right.
That is, when I hear those stories of long-term incarceration because of a relatively minor offense, but it was a third time, a third strike. California legislation, a lot of other states had these laws that are being changed now, but so many people are still in prison for crimes like this. It's crazy.
Right. Well, again, I thank you for giving another chance to those who are coming out of incarceration with criminal records and history. And I have a long criminal record history, multiple misdemeanors and felonies, and I still remember my old number when ALR 932 from when I was incarcerated in Santa Rita in California.
But, Jerry, I fully respect all the credit you give to God and Jesus on this, but you got to give yourself a lot of credit. You worked hard to turn your life around.
I do give God the glory, and I thank God for what He's done in my life and the favor that has come upon me, because the beautiful thing about it is that people want to give you opportunity and chances when they see you taking steps to want to change your life.
Correct.
You'll find yourself being accepted for a position that you're not even qualified for because someone felt drawn or compelled to say, I want him or I want her. I thank God for that, because I feel God is involved in touching the heart, about a particular individual. So, yeah, I took steps, but God takes bigger steps. And I applaud what you're doing, man. Keep doing what you're doing. Again, the address where you're located again?
22 Andover Drive in West Hartford, but, the showroom is closed right now. We do online sales, and we deliver, we sanitize the furniture after it's off the truck before the customer touches it. We're very careful. We have only one driver in the truck to protect our drivers, and we take great care inside the shop as well to keep everybody safe. Can I remind you listeners that you can find us online at valueofficefurniture.com or secondchanceplanet.org, but the second is not the word, it's the number 2ND. So the easiest way is valueofficefurniture.com.
Amen. Well, Gregory, it was a pleasure speaking with you, man. And
thank you, Jerry.
Keep
up the good work.
You too. And I'm looking for. I got to come see you. You're in West Hartford. I'm in Hartford. We're close. So we'll talk off air, and I'm looking forward to meeting you. If we stood 5 feet in front of each other, we wouldn't know who each other was.
Right. That's right.
Well, take care, and
stay safe.
You too. I'll talk to you later and see you down the road.
Take care. Bye-bye.
So I thank God for His mercy. I thank God for His grace. I thank God for giving me second chances. Second chances.
And you just heard part 2 in my final segment of my conversation with Gregory Spear, founder of Second Chance Planning, Inc., there in West Hartford. If you would like more information about what you heard today, call WIHS 860-346-1049, 860-346-1049. The opinions expressed are those of the participants, not necessarily of those of the staff or management of the station. I'm Gerry Williams for the WIHS Journal. It's news and public affairs.